the 3.5 hours ago. So this is awesome. Hi, everybody. Welcome.
What's going on? We're just taking a look at the website. If you want to see it, it's called thesearchforsolutions.com. Let me actually pull up the chat over here.
Thesearchforsolutions.com is the website for the Libertarian, that would be me, the Socialist, that would be Xander, walk into a bar, and we try to figure shit out.
And then here we go. I got the comments up over here now.
There it is, the website.
We put here, I added one more policy that we chatted about last episode. You'll see it's on episode 5. Promote it and own it. If a platform's algorithm chooses to amplify content into millions of feeds, it should be legally responsible for that content the same way any publisher would.
Hey, so Texas Lib. Hey, everybody. That's really cool, Xander.
What's up, gang? We've got our episodes down here. So if you guys ever want to catch up on the full slate of things we've chatted about and whatnot, it is
By the way, Xander, here. Pull that up. Pull that, the opposites. Pull up our pictures again. Before we get in, I'm going to make one change to our website. I look like a fucking crabby old conservative in that pic. I'm going to give you a better pic for next week.
It's perfect. I need to look. I should be wearing. We should really like chin it up. Like I should be wearing like a tie-dye shirt.
Hey, you look young and hip and happening. I look like a crabby old white conservative. Get off of my lawn. Get off of my fucking lawn.
Do you have a good fish shake? How's your fish shake? Is it solid? Get off my lawn, fish shake.
I've never seen you in a really bad mood. I've never seen you grouchy or crabby. I'm sure you do it.
It happens. It happens.
It's got to happen.
It happens. It's mainly in a domestic environment. My wife is mainly the core witness to the crappiness. Yeah. I in general, I love this type of work. I love this. I love figuring this stuff out.
And by the way, everybody joining us, this is a Libertarian Socialist meet in a bar. Xander Schultz and Joe Walsh. And Xander drives this truck, and I sit alongside him. But before we get into your show, what you want to do, one question. When you look at everything fucking happening in this country right now, what pisses you off the most? What does make you angry and fucking pissed off? Go.
It's funny. I have a screensaver, or not screensaver, desktop on my computer. It's Lincoln, and it says you can tell the character of a man by what makes him angry.
Oh, I like that.
So it's an interesting way to phrase the question.
Yeah. What fucking pisses you off mostly about how things are going right now? What's going right now? What's not going right now? Not what makes you sad, not what makes you hopeful or fearful. What just fucking pisses you off?
Systemic suffering, just engineered suffering. You know, the prison camps. You know, the jails we do have, the poverty that we could alleviate, the homelessness we could alleviate. Just like, you know, if we treated systemic suffering like we treated fucking hurricanes, where there's a weird thing where it's like if we're used to it, it just fades into the background. Mm-hmm. It just fades in the background. This is just life as it is. People have to be outside. And every once in a while when you travel overseas, it like snaps you awake a little bit. Mm-hmm. I remember when I was working in the refugee crisis. This was a little bit condemning for America. When I was working in the refugee crisis, I was in Greece during the Syrian civil war that was spilling over into Europe. The Scandinavian volunteers were like falling apart in the camps. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you can't have that because you've already got people who are really in a desperate situation. You can't have the volunteers. The like Syrian refugees were like consoling the Scandinavian volunteers at times. You're like, all right, we got to figure it out. But you talk to them, you're like, what's going on? And it was just like them seeing so much suffering, like people sleeping outside in the cold and not having anything, etc. And I realized how conditioned to seeing that I was. At the time, I was living in San Francisco too, right? And it's like I'm conditioned to seeing people fucking sleeping in tents or on the street, you know, in a way that they weren't, and it was unimaginable to them. And I was so well conditioned around it. So I just think I think we have so many resources to share.
That's so much. Xander, that's a really cool answer out of you, and it reflects your heart. It's the systematic injustice that fucking righteously pisses you off? That's a consistent answer for you. If I ask and that goes to who you are in your heart. If I ask myself what fucking pisses me off right now more than anything, it's that my former political party is untethered to truth. That my former political party, we're seeing it in California, just cannot accept a fucking election loss. My former political party has become a party of sore losers. And that just fucking pisses me off.
I think I think actually that's a close second to me is if the trade-off of morals for ambition. Like, you just see it everywhere in our society. Yeah, not only your former political party that you're talking about, but also the people who won't stand up to your former political party, the fucking opportunists in the tech industry who are gung-ho, about getting this guy out of there 10 years ago and now are happily sitting with him, So it's just like, guys, how much is enough? I think one thing that's always been frustrating to me is we have a lot of accountability in this country around crimes related to poverty. But when it comes to crimes of power, whether it's police immunity or fucking Wall Street corruption or political corruption, like, it's fucking hard to find. Look at the Epstein files. It's like, how condemning does the evidence have to be? How many people need to corroborate what the fuck happened in those places and who was there before, those people are held accountable. But you get a black kid that's fucking poor that steals a couple fucking burgers from a place, and then he's at Rikers pretrial for 3 years because he can't fucking afford bail. And then he commits suicide because of the trauma. I'm slightly offhand mentioning Khalif Browder, if you've ever seen that documentary. To the fucking trauma that he went through while incarcerated. This is actually, criminal justice reform is a great way for socialists and libertarians to team up, because neither of us think it's a good use of capital having people fucking incarcerated all the time. So, but I was looking at your pillars this morning.
Yeah. What's on your mind today?
I want to talk about immigration.
Okay.
I want to talk about immigration because I think I actually have something at the beginning of something we can workshop. Going back to my days in the refugee crisis in Europe, Europe's out was they paid Turkey to provide asylum. That's eventually, they had, Germany took in 1 million people, Austria took in 200,000. I don't know the total that came into Europe. But at a certain point, the political will changed in Europe. I think Germany at first was very excited to make amends for their past and show up in a big way in that moment. But at a certain point, the political will changes in Europe. And they're looking for an out. And their out is they paid Turkey, I think it was $2 billion to provide asylum to everyone coming over from Syria. And what that allowed them to do is then, it's the UN Charter, you have to provide asylum to a refugee. But then if someone went from Turkey to Europe, they were no longer a refugee because they had asylum. Now, in some ways, this was condemned by some of my peers, but I think partially not because it's a bad idea, partially because it was Erdogan and Turkey and your belief that those guys were going to meaningfully take in these people versus pocket the $2 billion and, treat these people terribly was pretty high. The confidence that that's how it would be executed. But there were parts of it that made sense. For example, Turkey's culture a lot closer to Syria's than Germany's. And that's not saying, hey, we don't want them there. It's literally, I knew refugees in all these spaces. It was an easier transition to living in Turkey than it was to living in Syria. Now, some people want to go to Germany, and we should still have legal immigration routes for that. But a lot of them, it was nice for them to stay in a culture that was closer to home and similar, a language that was closer to home and similar, et cetera. And so I was thinking about solving a couple of our problems with one big idea, and I just want to get your reaction to it. We have a couple of big problems. One, global supply chains, we're over-reliant on China. Right? And they're becoming increasingly a political foe of ours, and it's increasingly making us vulnerable. And two is this immigration issue that's mostly not driven by Mexican immigrants, but it's refugees from below Mexico, right? Colombia, Venezuela.
And by the way, Xander, you're right. A lot of people don't realize that most of the refugees, most of the people on our southern border trying to come in here are coming from South Mexico. And to your earlier point, the Trump administration has tried to force a policy where once they enter Mexico, Mexico grants them asylum so that they can't come here to claim asylum. Go ahead.
So it's not a bad plan. Mexico grant them asylum plan. Here's where I think it could really work out for the U.S. Partially the reason why immigrating to the U.S. is challenging now is our we've become a post-industrial society that doesn't have as many blue-collar jobs as we used to have. But we have this need to move away from China as the manufacturing base. So the idea is Marshall Plan Mexico as the manufacturing hub of our hemisphere, invest in them building it out. And the handshake agreement is part of that investment. Not only is good for us because there's a lot of commerce at the southern border, there's got to be, businesses on our side of the border that also are part of that supply chain. And we've seen this transition already. But part of it is also as we help you build out this manufacturing base, you are going to both provide asylum and provide jobs to a number of the refugees that are coming through your southern border and landing there. And so you are going to take on a much larger share of the immigration burden, but you're going to do so in a way that provides jobs and provides a fresh start for those people, that provides dignity for them, but it also allows them to be in a Spanish-speaking country that's more culturally similar to where they're from, and has a slate of jobs for lower skilled refugees. It doesn't mean we do away with our immigration program. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we are solving the asylum urgent resettlement issue by Marshall planning Mexico.
Okay.
All right, I'll pause.
Okay. It's a really cool, intriguing, big idea. I'll start really big picture in that this country, our country, has done a piss poor, lousy job of comprehensively caring for and collaborating with our hemisphere.
Yes.
Which
what do
is
you mean
why
when you say that? Say more. Where do you think we
we need to own, lovingly not own, but we need to. We've always failed to comprehend that all the countries in our hemisphere are our neighbors. We should in many ways act as one, because the problems in our southern hemisphere impact us. So we've needed for a long, long number of years to work on collaborative big solutions like one of the ones you're bringing forth today. Work with our southern neighbors, work with Mexico. For way too long, and it's exasperated by Trump, but for way too long, there's been an adversarial relationship with our neighbors in our hemisphere, which only hurts us. And so I do want to see generally, if I were president of the United States, man, I would make it one of my big planks that I want us to be one hemisphere again, and we're all working together on these problems. So I big picture, I agree with you. In essence, what you're saying is we would end our asylum process at our southern border. Mexico would assume the asylum burden from anybody coming up south,
or a great
of
deal
Mexico,
of it.
correct?
A great deal of it, right? And it's some large majority of the asylum burden that we face.
So then, just again from an individual freedom perspective, that 24-year-old dude from Nicaragua coming up through Mexico who wants to come to America to claim asylum, we're denying him that freedom, that ability to come here and claim asylum. And I recognize that the whole asylum process is you need to leave your country. And legally, I think internationally, you could cobble together your reform where you're leaving your country, you're going to Mexico, they can provide safe harbor asylum for you.
You're not restricted for asking to immigrate, right? What we're saying is once you have asylum somewhere, once the country says, I will keep you safe, you are not, the U.S. is not, by UN charter, not legally, doesn't legally have to you can't deport someone who has a legitimate refugee claim. If they're coming from a war zone, they don't have asylum anywhere. You legally cannot deport them back to their country. What we're saying is make sure those people land on their feet with asylum and a job in Mexico as we build it into this like manufacturing. It already is, right? We're
But
already
make sure, in essence, Andrew, you're saying let's just relocate them to Mexico.
Let's get you stabilized in Mexico, whatever your ambitions are, and part of the handshake deal, we're going to build a manufacturing partner there. We already have a manufacturer. We're going to scale a manufacturing partner there, and part of the handshake deal is some of those jobs are going to be reserved for people claiming asylum and need a fresh start. That doesn't stop that person from making in immigration, trying to immigrate to America. That person can still
trying to just become a citizen of America.
Yeah, you can still come to America. And I don't think this alleviates our need that Joe, you and I would probably agree on having a better immigration process writ large of people applying to immigrate to America, et cetera. So it doesn't solve everything, but it stops the bleeding.
You're talking temporarily about just those knocking on our southern door to claim asylum. Those people, not people coming here to become citizens off the bat, but people coming here to claim asylum would in essence be relocated. They'd claim asylum. They'd get asylum.
They'd have it
as
Mexico. They went through Mexico. They'd have it as they went through Mexico. I want to respond to a comment. Emma MacArthur Warner saying, "Why in Mexico, not here, though?" Basically, wages. This is just the world's manufacturing is already in large part in Mexico as well as China. It's just a wage issue of where companies build products.
That is happening by the day.
I mean, we can. Trump has tried to reshore manufacturing to America. It hasn't happened because it doesn't make sense for companies, And that was a very extreme intervention he put in place, probably more extreme than anyone else would. Where he pumped up the cost of products from other countries by minimum. What was his global tariff? 10%, minimum of 10%. But in like places like China for a while, it was like 30 or 40%, right?
Yeah.
And we still didn't reshore. So it's really just where we are on the kind of industrial, post-industrial path as countries. Mexico is in an industrializing path with wages that make sense for people, for companies to use, basically.
And companies have been availing themselves of that opportunity now for years, and a lot of Americans don't realize it. Xander, I think it makes sense because the other really important problem here is our relationship with Mexico and Mexico itself. Again, I talked about how we ought to be adopting our entire hemisphere to make life in our entire hemisphere better. Mexico in particular, our southern neighbor, baby, ought to be our southern brother, our southern sister. And we should be doing everything we can economically to help Mexico instead of being so adversarial. The issue of immigration has helped make it so adversarial. So this would also be a way for us in Mexico to really work together. I think in a lot of ways it makes sense. My one concern I've got is that we do need workers in this country. We need immigrants to grow this economy still, no matter where this economy is going to go. So if I were to pursue a Marshall Plan in Mexico like you're talking about, and if I were in power, I would want to continue to greatly expand the number of immigrants we allow to come here every year to become citizens, generally speaking.
I think that's right. We've also got an aging demographic. We can chat about that, which immigration is really an important part of the solution. We've got a big agriculture sector and housing sector that's been really.
And by the way, Xander, you're probably more knowledgeable about this than I am. There are shitloads and shitloads of manufacturing jobs. We're at a moment in America where we've talked before, people don't need to go to college. AI is really going to change everything. But man, working with your hands, that's going to be a premium. And the whole manufacturing sector has become so technologically sophisticated. We're talking about really good jobs with really good benefits. So that's a big need in this country as well.
100%. I think the thing that has been challenging in American politics and why Trump has had support for a while, is illegal immigration that was driven by, where was the big refugee crisis recently, and it wasn't Venezuela. Where was the big refugee crisis in South America?
Wasn't Colombia, was it?
And so maybe it was Venezuela, South America.
Maybe it was Venezuela, the last big one.
But over 7 million people left Venezuela. 7 million since
It's a lot.
2015.
It's a lot.
So that's been the big point. Like a big part of the illegal immigration problem here is literally how Honduras, also the hurricane. So thank you, Chris and Lynn. A big part of it was like legit asylum claims, and that's why we had so many people that we couldn't send back anywhere, but we also weren't processing fast enough because our system couldn't take it as well. So this is a way to make sure people land on their feet, deal with the humanitarian crisis, and many people, I'm sure, will stay once they have a good job over there and whatnot, and it makes sense. There's going to be a lot more job if we are, to your point, being good neighbors and moving our business to our neighbors. There's going to be a lot more jobs. It's going to be, China moved 600 million people from lower class to middle class. I know that terminology is a little bit old, but that you get what I'm saying. 600 million people in the last 40 years, right? So if we move a lot of that business to Mexico and invest in that, they're going to have a big leap forward, which is also great for us. It's nice if your hemisphere is wealthier. It's really nice for you if the countries around you are wealthier.
And that's the theme here, right? If we did a better job of helping our hemisphere become wealthier, there wouldn't be so freaking many people every year knocking on our door claiming asylum. But to make your plan work, Xander, we have to help Mexico get their act together because Mexico's got real law and order issues that we would really have to help with. To help their economy really grow and accept all of these new faces from Honduras and Guatemala and Venezuela.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think. I mean, it's funny. You and I chatted. I almost wrote about this. I feel like a pipeline of notes that I've decided should be posts instead. And one of them was after our conversation. We talked about cultural anxiety versus economic anxiety and like what created Trump. And I did some research on that because I think oftentimes I hear those as being treated like two different things. But we are more giving when we are in abundant environments. And so I think they really bleed into each other, right?
Totally.
If you look at the progress we made in the 50s, a lot of that was workers' unions supporting the civil rights movement. Why were workers' unions supporting the civil rights movement? They just got a 40-hour work week. They just got a weekend. Like they're feeling good. The middle class is growing. People's lives are getting better. And when you feel like your life is getting better and you have more to share, then the cultural stuff follows. And like the inverse is true, right? Post World War I Germany, there's reparations. The country's destroyed. They don't feel like they have a lot. They feel like they're getting beat up by the people, countries around them. It allows room for scapegoating. It's the enemies outside and the enemies within, and it's a cultural thing too, right? And so those two things really work hand in hand with one another. And I say all that just to say, maybe life's getting good in Mexico. The middle class is booming. We 5x manufacturing production there. You got a little more tax revenue coming in. Life's getting a little bit better. There's opportunity for young men. A lot of times gangs thrive when there's not enough opportunity for young men. And we've seen that, when countries economically develop, crime goes down because of more increased opportunity and jobs for young men. So yeah, but what else do you think we need to do? You mentioned helping Mexico.
Yeah. And Xander, again, shit just happens so quickly, and we forget we're only 2 generations removed from my grandfather generation, your grandfather's generation, working at the same fucking job his whole life in town, that same plant in town.
Totally.
We're only 2 generations removed from that. We forget this a lot. And in many ways, our government, our governance, our government, our private sector hasn't caught up with this rapid change. And then Trump comes along and promises bullshit and lies. I'll bring that coal. I'll bring clean coal back. I'll bring that plant in town back. All of that shit. All a lie. But you and I heard the response to that lie about damn fucking time, because we're still so close to that America. What you're proposing here, this Marshall Plan for Mexico, is something that should have been contemplated a while ago, because it's to help us ease to a place where we should be. I think it makes, Xander, I think it makes a lot of sense. But
and it's a national security thing with China. We just continue to build out, like, there's a competitive hegemony that has no interest in, like, being a democracy or being our ally, and we keep building their economy. We like their economy's like, so much of their economy is that we buy the shit made there. It's like that's a massive part of their economy, and so we need to be a little bit. And Mexico, meanwhile, has an increasingly strong democracy. Like they're strengthening. They're going the right direction. They're our southern neighbor, and so, like, I think we need to increasingly be smart about who we economically intertwine with, support, build up as, like, the largest consumer base in the world.
And it's that's right. And Trump has tried to get us to do the exact opposite, to completely look inward, when the answer and the solution is, again, to look outward to help fix our problems here. I think, Xander, the key is to strengthen our relationship with Mexico to do this. And to look at each other as partners.
You don't think we're in a nice? You don't think Trump's doing that at the moment? Looking at
I think that, and I don't know. It's interesting, Xander. I don't know if the next Democratic president would even have this on his top 5 agenda sheet. But becoming partners again with Mexico would be, to me, like job number 1 of part of the repairing of what the next president has to do. This Mexico and the United States of America should be bosom buddies.
So on top of this kind of economic, strengthening the economic relationship, how else do you think that should play out?
Well, they've got a problem with drug cartels. They have a problem. There's a security aspect here too to all of this. They have a huge still corruption problem in their government and in their law enforcement, often tied in with the powers that the various drug cartels have. We would need to provide a lot of assistance, not ham-handed, but a lot of assistance in helping Mexico clean up that aspect of their government and their body politic. And that's a tough one.
It's funny, though, like, in some ways, like, if you think about where we were as we were industrializing, it's kind of the same, right? Like, pre-industrial, like, there's totally. There's kind of organized crime gangs in different cities that are part of the infrastructure, that how things run. And then as your country becomes wealthier, as there becomes more opportunities, like, your institutions get a little stronger, they're able to enforce it and reject that type of localized corruption. We have a different type of corruption now, where like our federal has been, dominated in different ways. But
you're right. You're right, Xander. Look, the goal is to fucking improve the shit out of Mexico economically.
Yeah.
And all I'm saying is to get there. And by the way, that's of huge benefit to us, of huge benefit to the rest of the hemisphere, to get there, to help Mexico get there. The drug cartel and the security issue, the corruption issue down there has got to be worked with.
It's funny. I feel like we're starting to scratch at. Now I've been talking to you long enough, I'm starting to see how we look at a problem slightly differently, and how that then leads to it seeming like we have very different stances. Like,
explain.
I think the core issue is economic instability. So whenever I see a problem, I'm like, how do I help stabilize these people?
You do.
And then the problems, my thesis, right? The problems start fading away a little bit. The men have more opportunity, et cetera, like we've been talking about. you don't necessarily have the exact same thesis. You're like, improving them economically is important. But also, not necessarily but first, but also we need to like deal with this problem simultaneously versus sequentially. What do you mean when anyway, I think that there's something that's like at the root of these two different ideologies that we have that is like embedded within that thesis.
No, Sandra, it's really interesting. That's astute. That is always your starting point.
Yeah.
And I get it and I appreciate it. That is always your starting point. Improve someone's economic lot in life, all else will take care of itself. There's a lot of truth to that. I think, but then what do I lead with? You do lead with that. I'm trying to articulate what I lead with.
Well, I think you just don't see it as the root of everything. You're also
I
saying
don't.
you're saying, hey, even if we do improve that economic, they also need some support with their drug cartels. And my just to like
Yeah.
go back and forth on this, I'm saying if we can get a bunch of young men jobs and alternatives that are better than being a drug cartel, we are taking care of the drug cartels to a certain extent. We're ruining their ability to recruit, right? And so, which is like it's a huge part of it. Like alternative options that are less dangerous and more lucrative is like how you and even in
Yeah.
business, how you kill the competition. You're like, "Hey, I'm offering you double your salary and better benefits, man. Come on over to this team." And that's how you. So I think
Agreed.
that's
No, and
my thesis.
I think that's and Xander, look, I think that's a key part of it. I think a lot of this is all just tied together. I just don't think that's the only piece.
Yeah, it's the
I
only
do
piece.
think
That's fine.
yeah, I do think that's
Yeah.
a big part of it. And the other difference between you and I is I think our goal is the same. We always want to improve everybody's economic lot in life. I tend to want to do that in a way that's consistent with individual freedom. And I'm not saying you would sacrifice some individual freedom to get economic nirvana. No, you wouldn't, but you're more into systemically doing what we have to do, even if again we do have to give up a little economic individual freedom.
Christine McCafferty.
What?
Sorry if I
Don't
skewed
jump.
your name. Oh no, the USA should improve the Mexican economic life. Focus on your the US. Oh no, the US
Should not.
should not. She's basically saying should not focus on yourself, please. I think what I'm trying to say here, and this is actually the hardest part of this proposal, right? Is telling Americans this is what Trump preyed on too. Is telling Americans your money is well spent in some other places because of how you benefit. Like, and the Democrats didn't do a good job of that. USAID did not do a good job saying, guys, the reason we invest in, health programs in Kenya is because if we don't, they're not going to invest in it well enough, and it could create a pandemic that really hurts us. Is they did terrible. Instead they moralized it and said, we got to do this as leaders of the free world, et cetera, et cetera. And so they took this like moral imperative stance and didn't explain to America why those programs were actually critical. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing diseases pop up around the world that could easily travel back over here. And so, so I think with any of these programs,
Yeah.
Christian, you got to be able to explain it.
Yeah, and it's simple because neither Xander or I, the socialist and libertarian, are neocons or huge internationalists or interventionists. I'm not, and I know you aren't. But it's really quite simple. We will continue to have a gazillion people from our own hemisphere knocking on our door to come here legally, illegally, and to claim asylum, as long as the economies of those countries are disasters and dangerous places to live. So to me, I don't want a million people knocking on my door to claim asylum every year. So the way to alleviate that is to spend some resources to help our hemisphere improve their economic and security way of life so that people don't feel the need to walk thousands of miles to come here. it's just a wise investment to keep people from trying to get into this country.
Yeah, Shauna was saying, I was reading some of Shauna's comments saying we are seeing downstream consequences of certain administrations coming from a colonizer POV, particularly when we have state actors going into countries under the guise of peacekeeping, but really stirring the pot. Who benefits on a failed state? 100%, Shauna. I think actually we're totally aligned here. I think Joe is also not an internationalist in the what we did in Latin America over the last call it 60 years since like the 60s. I think Panama might have been in the 50s. Dominican Republic 61. We assassinated Trujillo.
Yeah, we're
Cuba,
not
we tried to
talking about
assassinate
any of that.
Castro over again, etc. But you're right. We destabilized the U.S. participated in the destabilization of our neighbors, oftentimes killing democratically elected uh, leaders, and it's not been good for us. But who is us? To your like Sean, I think the important point here is who is the us. Joe and I are talking about average Joe American that needs to be good for. Who those were good for was Enron and a bunch of these corporations.
Yeah, we're not
and
talking about
some
any of that.
actors. But I think it's important to differentiate sometimes the us. What Joe and I are interested in is how can everyday Americans have a better, safer system, right? And who that was for, who those adventures were for, was some mix of
Why? Somebody just said I'm a Canadian and this conversation is getting my hackles up. Whoever just said that, explain why.
hackles. I don't even know what a hackle is.
Like it's
Ding, ding,
getting them
ding.
all
Thank
pissed
you.
off.
Thanks,
them
Sean.
all pissed off.
I think we're on the same page, Sean. I think that's like it's a huge. This is a different conversation. We, Joe and I linked.
Yeah. And just to be clear,
there's an issue. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Xander. Neither Xander or I are advocating to do what Trump is doing. Like, I would not have invaded Venezuela. He's probably going to invade Cuba. That's not the kind of relationship I'm talking about. I'm talking about America, big brother in this hemisphere, economically helping other countries in our hemisphere. That's what I'm talking about because it's of great benefit to us.
Shauna, I think one of the things you're mentioning though is actually our number 2 pillar over here, which is political corruption. The reason that we're engaged in those things and have been engaged in those things is political corruption, which Joe and I both identified as like a really core pillar of problems we got to solve in this country. That was the capture of our political institutions by both like internally the military industrial complex and externally corporations with an agenda.
Right, and you and I, though, both probably opposed the invasion of Iraq back in the day. I like a lot of the Central American countries in our hemisphere. Their governments are a mess, right? But it's not America's role to say we're going to go into Venezuela and we're going to we'll create their democracy. That's not what I'm talking about. We're talking about collaboration with our neighbors to the south. And Xander's right in that the focus needs to be economic.
Martha Green says, didn't the Biden administration do some investing in south of the border countries? Yes. Yeah. Like, yes, this is already kind of in flight. Like Mexico recently replaced China as our number 1 importer, partially because of the logistical nightmares that COVID created. We started doing this transition. And so the proposal isn't let's do something new and turn Mexico into a manufacturing powerhouse. Mexico is already a manufacturing powerhouse. The proposal is let's step on the gas with that transition, go build up our southern neighbors, pull our capital away from China, and have a more prosperous hemisphere that would also simultaneously solve some of
it's already happening. Guys,
issues.
gang, everybody listen. American companies have been relocating a lot of their operations down in Mexico for years. It just makes economic sense. Xander's talking about a way to piggyback off of that and to expand it.
In an era where, by the way, I don't know what's going to happen with the Strait of Hormuz thing, but the price of oil might go up a lot. And when you're shipping shit from China, it's a lot more expensive than shipping shit from Mexico too, across the sea. So, all right, my friend, what else do you got for me today? That was the one I was most excited for you to chat with you about.
Xander, I think that's really good. And I think this was a really interesting conversation. And again, a socialist and a libertarian, neither one of whom are warmongers or interventionists, are trying to find a way to help Joe and Pete America who've been left behind improve their quality of life here in America. And a way to do that is to help the rest of our hemisphere economically improve their way of life. And a really key way to begin to maybe light that fuse is Xander's notion of this Marshall Plan, this asylum Marshall Plan to work with Mexico. I think it's interesting, Xander. Good idea.
Yeah, maybe next time we come together, we talk about the other leg of that immigration thing, which is that's aimed at a couple things. It's national security. It's it's immigration and asylum. There's another leg of it though that you've talked about a couple times, which we should get into next time, which is like, what about just regular immigration? Like, what role does that play in America? We've got the aging population issue. We've got big labor shortages in key industries that we need to talk about. And so this conversation was not supposed to be a solution to that one. That's another good conversation that we should get into. What's an effective immigration process?
The tease, everybody, is this. Immigrants are good, and America needs immigrants to grow. And right now, my former political party is not just anti-illegal immigration. My former political party is anti-legal immigration. We can't have that.
Brother, this has been so fun. Episode 6. This is becoming a real thing.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Xander.
Talk soon. Later, bye.